Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, come on in because it's League Unlocked. That is Mark. I'm Eric, and it's looking back at Worlds, and the memory's getting a little bit better because we get more and more recent. We're all the way up to 2018, Mark.
Oh boy, this one is a fun Worlds. We're only 2 years in the past now, and we're looking forward to what we're going to be getting, obviously, this year. But looking back at 2018, man, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of great stories going on with Worlds, and of course, gotta remember the launch of the KDA skin line. Everybody loves that. Riot loves getting that money.
Yeah, this was the real win from this whole event, was KDA being born, and it had been 5 years in a row that the LCK, or Korea, was winning the title, and the entire hype up leading to this event, even without SKT being at the tournament, was just, all right, Korea, more dominance. That's what the teaser was, hyping up Korea. Obviously, this is when Korea kind of fell a little bit short as we jump in to some of the group stage action. And we start with Group A. This was Afrika, G2, Flash Wolves, and the old Fongvu, thank you, Mr. Buffalo. And remember, this isn't G2 dominating Europe G2. This is third seed, had to go through the entire play-in stage with Hjarnan, Wadid, Jankos, and Wonder. So they weren't expected to get out of this group, probably.
No, they were not expected to really push out of the group. People wanted them out of this group, but nobody really had the expectation that this squad would be able to put together the performances or put together the necessary wins to get themselves out of this group.
Yeah, and pretty much all of their wins came in incredibly dramatic fashion. You had picking Heimerdinger. That's the meme with Hjarnan on this roster. Afrika doesn't ban it. They beat them in the first game. They have a back door against Flash Wolves. Not a base race, but it was a back door from Wonder on Camille, and they struggle. They lose to Fongvu, and then they almost lose again. This is where the meme of Fongvu is the kryptonite to G2, which would follow through into 2019, by the way.
It was a strong meme of the Buffalo coming through. But look, when you watched the Buffalo play, they were exactly what you want from one of these regions that gets into these groups and doesn't really have a shot. But you want them to be able to pick off one or two teams, make an upset, shake things up in that group's dynamic. Couldn't have asked for more from the Buffalo. It was really an entertaining group for the fans.
Yeah, and they shook things up because they beat Flash Wolves in their final game, which made it necessary for a tiebreaker between Flash Wolves and G2 for that second seed. 3 out of the 4 groups, by the way, needed a tiebreaker for seeding out of groups, which is absolutely insane. But G2 finishes 3-3, ends up getting out of this group with Afrika in first. Group B is the most deadly group maybe we've ever had at a World Championship. This is Gen G, defending champs, who at the time coming into this event had the gauntlet buff. They looked great throughout the regional run. They took down Kingzone and Griffin. RNG were consensus the best team in the world because they had won literally every tournament in 2018. Cloud9, this was 10th place in the LCS, did the full run through the gauntlet and play-in stage. And Vitality was some fun rookies that thought you could make some noise. This is one of the most insane groups we've ever had.
This is one that when you looked at this group, and especially coming into this group as well, you were thinking, yeah, strength of Gen G, world champions, just gone through the gauntlet. They're going to get that buff. They're going to be strong once again. RNG, Uzi, everything, of course, about that name. And then you talk about Cloud9 and Vitality coming through there and their hopes to get out of that group and what they did and the effort that they put through to push this group to what it was and the records that the teams had in this group stage, in this round robin. Man, what an entertaining Group B this was. I think next year, I think we got a little bit better as far as the group of death would go. But for this one, this was truly a real battle to get out of Group B.
And you had Vitality beating Gen G and RNG. Same with Cloud9. Gen G finishes 1-5 for the worst group stage record ever by a Korean team. First time they didn't even get out of groups since 2013. And it ends up being a tiebreaker between Cloud9 and RNG for first. C9 was one game away from first, and this is where you saw, the meta's not quite the same for RNG. And in the group stage even, you saw them struggling more than people expected. We know how the knockout rounds would eventually go, but they at least finished first in this insane group, and Vitality, respect absolutely what they did, even though they didn't get out of that group stage. You gotta respect them.
Gotta respect what Vitality did. And of course, Yamato Cannon's very inspiring speech for the European region at that time. And when you're also thinking of what was going on in that group and the failure of Gen G to be 1-5, again, thought they were coming in, getting that gauntlet buff, defending world champions. But one of the things that people have been talking about, that we talked about and seen from Gen G and was our concern, was their inability to adapt to a faster pace of play, to push the game pace even faster. They had to be slow, scale out. That's what we were seeing from them. And you know what? Especially the way that RNG and Cloud9 and Vitality played the rest of that group, that wasn't going to cut it.
Yeah, it didn't work out well for them. They beat Cloud9, and that was it. That was their main highlight throughout the group stage, which was crazy. We move on to Group C, which is a tale we've heard many times before. Doublelift going to Worlds and getting one game away from getting out of the group stage. And I don't think people are that hard on Team Liquid for not getting out of this group. You probably would have expected, I think, because they stole a win against EDG when they had already clinched. People forgive them a little bit more, but it was EDG denying KT that perfect 6-0 record, and TL didn't really have a chance in either matches against KT.
No, they really were clearly outclassed, outmatched in that series, and in the 2 games put together, I guess, if you want to call that a series. When you're thinking about this iteration of Team Liquid at Worlds and what they were supposed to do, again, coming off of titles in North America, the expectation of how you were dominating, not just winning them, but dominating your way to those titles, the expectation for this top team from North America was to get out of groups. And again, with an all-star player like Doublelift, that's the demand, that's the ask, and that should be okay. It wasn't reached yet again. And this is one of those ones where it's disappointing. I look at next year as being even worse, given the, additional success that you have domestically at that point and the way that you had it. But for this one, what you were expected to do, and even looking at the group again, you should have found a way out of this one if you are considering yourself one of the best.
And EDG had plenty of weaknesses, but we see they actually played pretty well in the knockout round. Team Liquid 3-3, don't get out of groups. KT 5-1, EDG 4-2. Group D was a 2-horse race the entire time. Basically, as soon as the group draw happened, you knew, okay, something crazy would have to happen for Fnatic and IG not to get out of this group. 100 Thieves and G-Rex were clearly just on a totally different playing field than IG and Fnatic. And really, it came down to the last 2 games, and the tiebreaker alone that Fnatic and IG ended up playing, because they split 1-1, so it was a tiebreaker for first. That tiebreaker alone is just a highlight reel, a montage for multiple players within it. You had Rookie avoiding ganks in a 1v2, one of the greatest Worlds plays of all time with the Broxah Lee Sin, and you had the outplay Duke on Irelia in that tiebreaker. So that's just one game that these guys had.
It's so fantastic when I think back about this group and I look at these 2 at the very top, because you're right, it is one of the things that these are the 2 teams that you talked about, you'd hoped that would pay off for the hype that everyone's been looking forward to this event. You've been looking forward to, oh man, we're going to see Rookie on the international stage and, getting Caps back out there. All these type of headlines were heading into this group, and it all paid off with so much excitement, so much fun. The best games, really the best games that we've seen in the group stage for quite a while at Worlds were from this group. IG and Fnatic put on a real show.
And Fnatic beating them twice in a row to force the tiebreaker and then eventually win it, I think that's really when people were like, because Fnatic had a lot of hype coming into this event after dominating Europe, and when they beat IG twice, then it was like, okay, they're legit contenders to win not just that group, but maybe this entire event, which is something we hadn't talked about a Western team since, season 2.
Yeah, this was certainly one of those times where you're thinking, you know what? I hope they're going to be good. I want them to be good. And then you see them start to pull off these wins, start to get wins against IG, push it to that point where they're going to get out of the group as that first seed. that's when you start letting your mind run and start thinking about the chances, what they could be doing, and of course the potential of having one of these Western teams push to the very pinnacle of the world champion.
And you had all these Western teams with that getting out of groups, 2 European squads, a North American one. It was, of course, Cloud9, none of the other NA squads. Sorry, 100 Thieves. They only finished with 1 less win than Team Liquid. So they got that going for them, at least.
It could have played some Cody Sun games, right? Oh wait.
Oh, right. There was that entire debacle. That's the memory that 100 Thieves get from Group D, is not playing Cody Sun and Rikara being completely outclassed on the international stage. With that, then we move to the quarterfinals, which were maybe some of the best quarterfinals or most exciting that we've had at a world championship. They're often pretty one-sided, and there were several one-sided ones at this tournament as well. But we got to start with the greatest and biggest upset of all time. I still stand by it. We're talking G2 versus RNG. Remember, this is the RNG that won both LPL titles, absolutely dominated their run through MSI. This was the golden year, the Grand Slam. They were looking to be the only team to win both domestic titles, MSI and Worlds. Not even SKT had done that. Uzi was, if you were arguing against him being the best player in the world at the time, you were insane. But Mark, the meta changed to solo laners and flex picks. Oh, RNG.
Oh man, I was fortunate enough to go to this Worlds and be at the quarterfinal venue for this one. I'd gotten there just for IG and KT just before it, and of course you had all the Chinese fans that had come over to Korea and had stuck around after IG managed to pull off a great series on KT. And you had them there waiting to see their god, Uzi, pull on through, smash G2, and push on through.
He couldn't click the lantern. He couldn't click the lantern.
Couldn't click the lantern, man. It was just a handful of Western fans and G2 fans there, as well as Wadid's whole extended family there in Busan. And it was a wild time to see them pull off an incredible full-on 5-game upset.
5 bans for Heimerdinger. RNG wasn't having any of that nonsense. And this series, RNG did go up 2-1. They had match point before G2 absolutely pumped them in Game 4. And Game 5 is the Lantern game, where Uzi couldn't click on any lanterns all game. And the best single-game performance maybe any Western player has ever had, with Perks on the LeBlanc. They end up getting this huge upset. No Sven and Mithy, no problem. They go top 4, but that's still one of the biggest, greatest upsets that we've ever had at an international event. KT versus IG, one of the other semifinals, the one that you alluded to. And the third game, it looked like, wow, we're going to see a reverse sweep. And then craziest endings that we've had at a world championship was that third game. It even juked the cameraman.
Man, I showed up 5 minutes before that ending to that Game 3 goes down.
Crazy.
And crazy to get there in time to see it, and everyone losing their minds. The cameraman, of course, not even being able to catch it quite right. It was one of the it's as close as it possibly can get, really, as far as looking at the two healths of the Nexus. And man, what an unreal series for KT to push back the legend of Score, trying to push on through in the hometown, home country. Couldn't get it done.
And quickly on that teleport play, the fact that Smeb TP's out of his own base to go help them end faster is the craziest part of that whole sequence. And then you're sure KT's going to win this series with that momentum. IG losing a game like that. It goes to Game 5, and that's the flash forward from Jackie Love that kind of seals the deal on the Xayah. And a terrible draw for both of these squads. I stand by KT was the second best team at this tournament.
I think that it's one of the shames that we got robbed of them in meeting in the quarterfinals. And it's one of those ones where, yeah, you love that matchup. You love that series. You just wish it was later, and you wish you got to see these teams maybe flex their muscles a little bit more, show off what they had, because you're right. I think at this time, the form that they had, this was their shot. And unfortunately, you ran into the Shy, Rookie, and Jackie Love.
Yeah, and that could have been semis. That could have been finals. I think KT could have beaten pretty much anyone else at the tournament in a best of 5. You also had Fnatic versus EDG, and people seem to forget that this series was really close, and Fnatic had a legit chance of losing this game because they get pumped in game 1, they come back in game 2, game 3, even though they won, they were behind in gold, even when they won the game. So EDG was fully in control, and even game 4 was really close.
EDG absolutely was the underdog in this series, of course, after the group stage and every expectation coming through. But that was the perfect role for them heading into this series and what they wanted to do. And they played it perfectly. And you said it, even coming away with the 3-1 as far as the series score, a lot closer, a lot much harder fought than the scoreline would indicate, that EDG really did put up that fight. And again, you had one of those games where all of a sudden you had Caps hitting that big old 0-4, 0-5 power spike on the Yasuo, and man, that's when Fnatic decided to turn things around.
Yeah, Reckless played pretty cleanly the entire series, but Bwipo, Caps, and Hylissang, there were moments where you're like, okay, maybe we're a bit hesitant claiming Fnatic to be favorites to win this whole thing all of a sudden. So definitely more questions arose than answers did after that series against EDG. Finally, we had Cloud9 versus Afrika, and all of a sudden, with Gen G out in groups, KT eliminated by IG, all of Korea's hopes are on the Afrika Freaks? What?
All of the hopes left on the Afrika Freaks, and everybody at this point had recognized that outside of KT, which KT was playing at a different level and a different style, outside of KT, both Afrika Freaks and Gen G were not able to adapt to the faster pace of the meta that was being played, and how the solo lanes and the carry play in those solo lanes was dictating what was going on. And that was simply what we saw in this series against Cloud9. Even against a Cloud9 team, they could not adjust to the pace of play that Cloud9 wanted to push and force them to play, even if you want to call the talent on individual players a discrepancy in whatever favor. The way that Cloud9 played, how they pushed the pace, it forced Afrika Freaks into situations they could not handle, and it was Cloud9 advancing for North America.
And for Kuro, a guy who's gone against Faker and World Finals and semifinals, to get absolutely smashed by Jensen in this series was definitely not something I expected. The LeBlanc out of Jensen was insanely clean, and game 3 of this set, which was Afrika's best game, they looked in control. You have the insane Ornn auto attack to steal the Baron that basically ends up sealing the series for Cloud9.
Oh my god.
That's still one of the craziest sequences too.
That one I will allow. That one I'm going to find some fault with the Afrika Freaks for letting that happen, because there's no way you should be letting Licorice on the Ornn just walk.
He didn't even have smite. He just smacked it.
He didn't have to do anything. He just walked in and said, okay, I'll take it. That's mine. And then left. Cloud9 said that was all it was going to take. And they said, you know what? Yeah, we'll take the series too.
No Korean team in the top 4 for the first time. And no, or North America getting to top 4 for the first time, because, sorry guys, I'm not counting Season 1, but Cloud9 advances to the semifinals. And in that top 4, you had the rivalry renewed, reignited, C9 versus Fnatic, one of definitely the best NA versus EU rivalry. It was usually Fnatic getting the better end of it, and that was more of the same in 2018. And for the questions that you had for Fnatic after EDG, Cloud9 looked so clean against Afrika. This is going to be a great series. No, absolutely smashed was Cloud9.
Yeah. But you could say that for both of the semifinals, for how close and how dramatic the quarterfinals were in some of those matches. Semifinals absolutely just smash shows for the teams advancing on and through. And Fnatic, no difference here. Yes, Cloud9 was able to push the pace against the Afrika Freaks. Yes, Jensen played fantastic in that matchup against Kuro. It was
harder to do
stacking up against the Fnatic squad, because I tell you what, Caps absolutely took every single one of the Cloud9 members out for their lunch money and cleaned them out, no problem.
Yeah, 3 straight Lissandra games for Jensen. Harder to impress on that champion. And Bwipo, the Victor Echo matchup, absolutely embarrassed Licorice. I mean, just laning alone, this series was pretty much over. The other side of the bracket, IG versus G2. Was it a bigger stomp? I think C9 Fnatic was a bigger stomp because Game 3 actually had close moments between IG and G2, but it was 3 different champions for the Shy, and he styled on G2 on Akali, Jace, and Aatrox. The Shy and Rookie were just absolutely insane this series, and Game 3 is when you had the Aatrox dunk from the Shy.
Yeah, of course, the legendary 5-man Aatrox dunk, hitting that third Q dunk. Oh man, that
so
damage
satisfying.
is absolutely disgusting coming on through. And you said it, the Shy playing the different champions, Rookie as well playing the different champions, and it was pretty much who was going to carry harder. It was one game it was the Shy, the next game it was Rookie, and then it was the Shy again type of situation on who was absolutely going to demoralize the rest of the LEC. Man, what a performance that came through from IG. And again, as you said it, Fnatic was dominant against Cloud9 and very impressive, but the form that the individual players, those 2 carries in the Shy and Rookie showed against G2. Again, this is heading into a G2 where people were feeling very excited, very confident about Perks and Wonder. It was no matchup against Rookie and the Shy. And that excitement, that form, you better believe that IG was taking that with them as they headed into finals.
Yeah, you thought maybe Fnatic would put up a better fight than their EU brethren, but it ended up being the fastest final of all time. 85 minutes, didn't even take him an hour and a half, and this is where Bwipo got tilted off the face of the earth and was borderline inting in some of these games. Soaz eventually comes in for Game 3, but it's way too late. Ning puts on a masterclass, picks up MVP. All the hype of one of the most exciting worlds leads up to one of the biggest stomps and finals we ever got.
The really unfortunate thing and the sad thing, and this is, regardless of who ended up winning the world championship, the sad thing is getting the fans robbed of seeing an actual competitive final event.
But they had the opening ceremony. They had KDA. What more do you need?
Pretty awesome, but at the same time, come on, give us an actual good series. And the unfortunate thing, again, and why I'm setting this expectation, we saw these matches be competitive. We saw these matches be exciting in the group stage.
The tiebreaker, yeah, we wanted more of that.
And then the weeks went by and the 2 teams went on their own paths through the knockout stage. And of course, whatever buffs and whatever form IG ended up in, they were a different species than what Fnatic was, because that was not a fair fight whatsoever in the way that they played, the way that they executed. It was, as deservedly so, a 3-0 sweep.
At least we had a good opening ceremony. Rise and KDA put on a show. And for me, Rise is still one of my favorite when you combine the animation and the song.
I will say, pretty awesome having Bobby from Icon. Got to get some K-pop rapping in there. Felt pretty good for the remix coming through for the finals. And as well, hey, finals venue, I think that this was a second time after the Bird's Nest and being in Beijing for that one. I think Riot learned a little bit from that venue being outside and what they could do. Felt a little bit better, a little bit more intimate, cozier at the venue in Incheon. And I will say, grabbed myself a nice bit of pizza outside and
wasn't bad. Wasn't too bad. It was the changing of the guard.
Hey, that pizza was a lot better than the effort than we saw from Fnatic that day. So I'll leave it at that.
It was a changing of the guard. The LPL win their first world championship and kind of became the best region in the world after that. That's it today for League Unlocked. Thanks for joining us. As always, Mark and Eric will catch you guys on the flippity flop.